looking at something that honestly affects every single one of us, the blueprint for unshakable confidence. Have you ever looked around a room and just wondered why some people seem to naturally radiate this effortless confidence, while, the rest of us are quietly battling daily self-doubt? It's kind of a profound mystery, right? We see these people taking risks, speaking up, leading the charge, and it is so incredibly easy to just assume they were handed this special set of genetics that somehow completely bypass the fear center of their brain. But as we'll explore today, the reality is actually way more fascinating than that.
And that brings us to the million-dollar question. Is confidence something you're born with, or is it something you can build? For the longest time, society has treated confidence like it's height or eye color, just a genetic gift. You either have it or you don't. But psychological research has revealed a massive paradigm shift here. Confidence is absolutely not a gift. It's a mechanical, psychological process. Basically, it's a skill. And the beautiful thing about skills is that anyone, literally anyone, can master them if they just understand the blueprint.
So let's get into Section 1, the confidence myth, and how we're flipping the script on self-belief.
Okay, so most of us are operating under this massive misconception. We stand at the edge of a new opportunity. Maybe it's speaking up in an important meeting, asking someone out, or starting some new creative project, and we just wait. We are waiting for this magical feeling of readiness to suddenly wash over us. We treat confidence like a green light that absolutely has to turn on before we press the gas pedal. But look at the reality versus the myth here. We usually wait to feel confident before taking action. But the reality? You have to take the action first, and then you feel confident. Psychology definitively proves that the action must precede the feeling. You literally cannot think your way into feeling confident about something you've never actually done. Your brain needs proof. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting to feel ready before you start, well, you've essentially had the formula completely backwards.
Which takes us to Section 2, action comes first, or the science of doing.
Now, knowing that action comes first is one thing, but how do we actually apply this to our daily lives? The secret is surprisingly simple. You've got to stop overthinking. You don't become confident by sitting in an armchair visualizing perfection for hours on end. You become confident by stepping into the arena and simply doing the thing you're terrified to do. Think back to a super relatable experience for most of us, learning to ride a bicycle. Step 1, you get on, you feel terrified, you wobble, and yeah, you fall. You feel nervous and you fail. But here is where the psychological magic happens in Step 2. Every single time you get back on that bike and try again, your brain is actively collecting evidence. It's logging data that says, hey, we wobbled, we fell, but hey, we survived. Your brain desperately needs this concrete physical evidence of survival, and once it gathers enough of that data, we hit Step 3. Confidence naturally replaces the fear. That fear evaporates, not because you've logically thought about it, but because your brain now has undeniable evidence that you can handle it. And that's exactly how it works in literally every area of life.
All right, Section 3, decoding self-doubt, your brain's defense mechanism.
So, if action is the cure, why do we feel so much intense internal resistance in the first place? Why do we doubt ourselves so heavily when we face the unfamiliar? Think about those knots in your stomach before a huge job interview, or the sweaty palms before public speaking, or the sheer terror of pitching a business idea. We tend to look at this self-doubt as this fundamental flaw in our character. But the truth? It's rooted purely in biology. Self-doubt is simply a protective signal from the brain triggered by uncertainty, designed to keep you safe from potential danger. Your brain has one primary overarching goal: keep you alive. Period. So whenever you step into the unknown, your brain perceives that uncertainty as a literal physical threat. It doesn't know the difference between a high-stakes corporate presentation and, say, a hungry predator in the wild. It just senses danger. So self-doubt isn't a personal weakness or a character flaw. It's actually a highly evolved, biological protective mechanism that is functioning exactly as it's supposed to.
We all know exactly what this protective mechanism sounds like, right? What if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I'm just not good enough? I am absolutely sure every single one of us has heard those exact words echoing in our own heads at some point. It's totally valid and incredibly common. But we have to recognize what these thoughts actually are. These are not predictions of the future. Your brain is not a crystal ball accurately forecasting your doom. These are merely protective alarms. Honestly, it's just a smoke detector going off because you burned your toast. It's loud, it's annoying, it gets your heart racing, but the house isn't actually burning down.
But there is a real danger to treating every burned piece of toast like a raging house fire. Playing it safe keeps you from growing. While your brain desperately wants to keep you safely swaddled in your cozy comfort zone, Honoring that biological desire comes at a massive cost to your potential. If you retreat every single time that self-doubt alarm rings, you completely halt all personal growth. The things that make life rich, rewarding, and truly meaningful almost always exist on the exact opposite side of that alarm. You have to learn to hear the alarm, acknowledge it, and then walk through the door anyway.
Moving on to Section 4, the comparison trap and the illusion of social media. We've talked a lot about the internal hurdles, but man, we face massive external hurdles to building confidence today too. One of the absolute fastest, most ruthlessly effective destroyers of confidence in the modern world is our relentless habit of comparing ourselves to others. We are constantly weighing our everyday life against someone else's best moments. Social media is an absolute masterclass in creating a false reality. We sit on our couches, surrounded by the messy, unglamorous, sometimes just totally boring reality of our everyday lives, and we scroll through this endless feed of someone else's highly curated highlight reel. Right? They're always on vacation, they're always succeeding, they're smiling perfectly. It literally tricks our brains into believing everyone else has life perfectly figured out, which makes us feel instantly inadequate by comparison. It is a rigged game, for sure, and it's a game you will lose every single time you choose to play it. So what's the antidote to this toxic trap? Focus on progress, not perfection. True, sustainable confidence doesn't come from being better than other people. That's a moving target you can never realistically catch. True confidence stems only from becoming better than you were yesterday. When you shift your focus entirely away from comparing yourself to others and instead you just start tracking your own personal progress, you reclaim your power. You start acknowledging your own growth, and let me tell you, that is an incredibly solid, unshakable foundation for self-belief.
All right, Section 5, the trust foundation and the power of small promises. So we've covered the mindset shifts and the psychology, but how do we practically wire this into our actual daily routines? At its very core, confidence is simply trusting yourself. And just like trusting another human being, internal trust is built through consistency over time. And these steps, they are remarkably simple. Wake up when you said you would. Finish the workout. Read one chapter. Complete the promised task. We aren't talking about climbing Mount Everest or changing the world overnight here. We're talking about the mundane, everyday commitments you make to yourself. When you set an alarm for 6 a.m. and you actually get out of bed at 6 a.m. instead of, negotiating with the snooze button for another half hour, you're doing something profound. You are building a track record of reliability with yourself. You're proving with physical action that your word actually means something.
And that leads to this incredibly powerful internal realization: I can rely on myself. Every single small promise you keep sends a powerful, undeniable message straight to your brain. It proves to your brain that you are trustworthy. Think about it. If a friend constantly broke their promises to you, you'd eventually stop trusting them, right? You wouldn't rely on them. Well, we do the exact same thing to ourselves when we constantly break our own rules. But when you consistently follow through on the small things, you forge the absolute bedrock of lasting confidence. You know, deep down in your bones, that you can rely on yourself when things get tough.
And this brings us to an ultimate truth. Confident people still feel fear. This is the great secret that no one really tells you. Becoming confident doesn't mean you suddenly transform into some fearless robot. The fear never fully goes away. That biological uncertainty, it never vanishes. The difference, and this is the absolute game changer, is that confident people simply refuse to let the fear make their decisions for them. They feel the fear, they acknowledge the brain's loud warning signal, and they boldly step forward anyway.
Ultimately, the whole shebang boils down to this. Confidence isn't something you find, it's something you build. Every single action you take despite the fear teaches your brain that you are capable. It's that bicycle analogy all over again. Over time, those tiny daily actions, those small kept promises, and those seemingly insignificant moments of acting in the face of doubt, they all compound. They stack up until they form a literal mountain of unshakable confidence. So I want to leave you with a question to think about. What small promise will you keep today to start building your unshakable confidence? Really think about it. Just one small thing. Don't sit around waiting to magically feel ready. Don't wait for the self-doubt to completely disappear, because as we've learned today, it never will. The blueprint is right in front of you. Take that first step today and start actively building your confidence right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Get out there and remember, keep building.